My son died in prison. There were so many answers we wanted. What did the prison do? What didn't they do? Why did he die?
Basically, prison's like a small community, and unfortunately in some cases we do experience as death. And when that happens, it's quite tragic and traumatic for the prisoner's family, but it's also the prisoners around there that are actually going through their own troubles and see this happen, as well as the staff actually dealing with the deaths.
The Ombudsman's office has two principal functions. The first is to independently investigate all complaints made by those in prison custody, immigration detention, or under probation service supervision. And the second principal function is the sad but essential role of independently investigating deaths in custody, prison custody, immigration detention, and deaths in approved premises.
The aim of the investigation is to help the coroner, give information to the family, and provide information to the services involved to help prevent future deaths.
Recent death in custody. We're completely independent from the prison service, and we look at practice and systems and make sure that everything's in place to ensure the safety of prisoners as far as possible.
We investigate all deaths in prison custody, approved premises and immigration detention centres. Anybody who dies within that particular establishment, whether it be by natural causes, whether it's a self-inflicted death, we would actually investigate. One of the first things that particular investigator will then do is visit the establishment where the death has occurred.
When we're investigating a suicide, we're looking essentially to see whether it could have been prevented or not. Did the staff take the proper monitoring action? Did they take the proper precautions?
I need to get an understanding of that environment that they've lived in, the sort of contact they've had with particular individuals, staff and prisoners. Generally, I want to see how this person has been cared for.
When they come in, it can be demanding because there's a large request. It's arranging staff interviews and stuff like that. And it may feel at first that you're an inquisition, you're to blame, but it's about finding out if there's systemic failures, finding out if the processes are in place are correct. And that's really all they're doing. The office is just down here.
My job mainly is to investigate deaths due to natural causes. We're looking to establish that the deceased received the appropriate level of care, equal to what they might expect to receive in the community, that nothing has been missed that might have helped prevent the death, and also if someone's in hospital with a terminal illness, whether they've been handcuffed, and if they were, was this really necessary given their physical condition.
Everybody in the Ombudsman's office believes that prisoners and other people in custody have a right to be treated with dignity and with humanity, and that is what motivates us to carry out these investigations.
The use of restraints in hospital was appropriate. What we're really looking to do is ensure that the establishment under investigation and the service under investigation have the facilities or the expertise available to provide appropriate care for someone in a similar situation in future.
That he used.
Each investigation has a family liaison officer who will lead the contact with the family throughout the investigation. Obviously, families are very upset that their next of kin has died in custody, and it's useful to have a family liaison officer as the main point of contact.
We offer them the chance of a visit to discuss their issues, questions and concerns about the care that their loved one received whilst in prison.
What will happen is that
we deal with the emotions and the grief and the distress that they're suffering at that time.
it's okay.
You could talk to her in plain English. It didn't matter how you said it, what you wanted to say, whether you were crying, however you felt. She just listened.
I want to know why I couldn't get a visit, I couldn't get to see him.
We take everything they say to us very seriously, so whether it becomes a major part of the investigation or not, whatever issues they have are very important to them personally at the time, so we have to take as much credence from that as possible.
Helping to answer the questions of the family is very important to us, and we share information with them and make sure that they have the opportunity to comment on our reports at every stage.
Obviously, recommendations are made from the reports, and these are passed on to the family so that they can see that we are making and taking positive steps to prevent this happening to people in the future if there's been a lack of care or things that could have been done and that should have been done.
We are prepared to share any information that we have with the relevant people who have an interest in the death, so that includes the coroner, the services themselves, and of course families.
The more open and honest you are with the investigation, the more detailed and thorough, and most importantly, the recommendations can be more accurate and therefore prevent further death in custodies.
A national one that we believe has had a big impact is that as a result of our investigations, every prison officer now carries an anti-ligature knife or cut-down tool. This means that if they find somebody who's attempted to hang or strangle themselves, they can cut the ligature, and very often that saves that person's life.
As we grow and progress through each action plan and recommendation given to us, we in fact become safer, and that's a good thing.
One thing which gives me a great deal of satisfaction in leading this team is the pride which people take in their work. We're all determined to look at all the circumstances of death in custody to ensure that all the lessons are learned to make things safer and better for prisoners and detainees in the future.
It's a very challenging job, but it's also very rewarding being able to provide a family with answers, with a story of what happened to their loved one during their time in prison or in an approved premises.
We do give families, I believe, a good insight into what happens behind those closed doors, so to speak, and certainly what has happened to their particular loved one or friend.
I hope our investigations make a real difference to the care of prisoners, and I think that's what drives me, and I think drives most of the office, to improve the safety of prisoners around the country.
You're not always going to get the answer there and then, but you know that once you've asked a question, there's somebody that will look into that and try to get you that answer. It meant a lot.